Think you'd recognize a narcissist if you met one? Most people believe they can spot narcissistic behavior easily, but they're looking for the wrong signs. While you're watching for obvious arrogance, the most dangerous narcissists are sitting right next to you wearing a mask of humility and kindness. Here's what's going to blow your mind. Research shows covert narcissists cause significantly more psychological damage than their obvious counterparts because their victims never see it coming. Clinical psychologists have identified 5 specific patterns that separate these emotional predators from genuinely wounded people trying to heal. Today, I'm exposing the 5 hidden signs of covert narcissism that could save you years of confusion, self-doubt, and emotional trauma. When you start recognizing these patterns, you're going to realize some people in your life have been systematically undermining your reality while positioning themselves as the victim. Good. That means you're finally ready to stop being their emotional support system. Sign 1. The victim superiority complex. Unlike obvious narcissists who boast about achievements, covert narcissists gain superiority through their suffering. They don't say, "I'm better than you because I'm successful." They say, "I'm more sensitive, more aware, more spiritually evolved because I've suffered more than anyone else." Dr. Eleanor Greenberg's research shows they use trauma narratives as both protective mechanisms and control tools. They've integrated their pain into their identity, positioning any challenge as triggering their trauma. Here's how this shows up. They share deeply personal stories about difficult childhoods or toxic relationships, but watch the pattern. Every conversation redirects to their pain. Every problem you present gets compared to their more severe experience. Every boundary you set becomes, "just like what my abuser did to me." The key difference from someone genuinely healing? Authentic trauma recovery involves growth and change. A covert narcissist's stories remain static, unchanged, consistently positioning them as the most wounded person in any situation. Their trauma becomes their source of power, but victim superiority is just their foundation. Sign 2 reveals how they punish you for having needs. Sign 2, the passive-aggressive punishment system. While obvious narcissists explode when they don't get their way, covert narcissists withdraw. They use emotional withdrawal as their primary control mechanism. When you displease them, they don't yell or argue, they become suddenly unavailable, implement silent treatment, or respond with minimal communication that creates anxiety about what you've done wrong. UCLA research shows they excel at plausible deniability. They create punishment while maintaining they've done nothing wrong. Watch for this pattern. You set a boundary, express a need, or disagree about something minor. Suddenly, they're too busy to respond to messages, too tired to make plans, or too overwhelmed for normal conversations. Yet they're active on social media, engaging with others, maintaining regular activities. When questioned, they respond with, "Nothing's wrong, I'm just going through a lot," or "I'm just focusing on myself." But this withdrawal consistently follows your assertion of independence. The most damaging part? They condition you to chase them. You end up apologizing for things you didn't do wrong, just to restore connection. You associate your boundaries with their absence, leading you to abandon boundaries to maintain the relationship. Their punishment system sets up sign 3 perfectly. Sign 3, the empathy performance theater. This creates the most confusion because they appear incredibly empathetic and caring. They cry at movies, rescue animals, seem deeply moved by others' suffering. But Harvard Medical School research reveals a crucial distinction. They demonstrate cognitive empathy without emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy means they can intellectually understand what you're feeling and mirror it back perfectly. But they don't actually experience your emotions. They're performing empathy because it generates their desired response. Here's the test. Observe what happens when their empathy becomes inconvenient. Genuinely empathetic people might feel conflicted about canceling plans during your crisis, but they'll prioritize your needs. A covert narcissist will express elaborate concern, but their own comfort consistently takes priority. They use phrases like, "I wish I could be there for you, but I'm just so overwhelmed." Or, "You know I care so much, but I have to take care of myself first." The language sounds caring, but actions consistently prioritize their comfort over your genuine needs. The performance also breaks down during your positive moments. Real empathy celebrates others' joy without competition. Performed empathy always redirects attention back through responses like, "That's amazing. I remember when something similar happened to me." But their empathy theater masks something even more toxic. Sign 4, the covert competition complex. They cannot celebrate your successes because your wins activate their comparison mechanisms. Instead of obvious jealousy, they use competitive victimhood and humble bragging to maintain superiority. University of Pennsylvania studies show they engage in social comparison downgrading. They subtly diminish others' achievements while elevating their own struggles or moral positioning. Here's how this shows up. You receive a promotion, they respond with, "That's great. I actually turned down a similar position because I value work-life balance more than money. You share an accomplishment, they say, I'm so proud of you for trying. I remember when I was at that level. They compete through suffering. You think your job is stressful? You have no idea what real pressure feels like. They compete through sensitivity. I wish I could be as carefree as you, but I feel things too deeply. They compete through moral superiority. I could never do what you do. My conscience wouldn't let me. The most damaging aspect is how they make you feel guilty for your successes. Somehow, your good fortune becomes evidence of your moral inferiority or lack of depth. You start downplaying achievements and apologizing for happiness just to maintain connection. All of this builds to sign 5, the most dangerous pattern. Sign 5, emotional responsibility reversal. They excel at making their emotional regulation your responsibility while taking no accountability for how they affect others. They use phrases like, you know how sensitive I am, or I can't handle conflict, to make you responsible for managing their emotions. But when their behavior hurts you, suddenly you're too sensitive, or making a big deal out of nothing. Clinical research shows they use emotional outsourcing. They expect others to regulate their emotions while refusing responsibility for their emotional impact. Here's the pattern. When they're upset, everyone must adjust. Plans get canceled. Conversations get redirected. Their emotional condition becomes everyone's emergency. But when you're upset about their behavior, you're labeled as overreacting or too emotional. Your feelings become evidence of your character flaws while their feelings require protection. They also use phrases like, I'm just being honest or I'm just trying to help to justify harmful behavior, then act wounded when you respond negatively. I was just trying to help you improve and now you're attacking me for caring. The most insidious aspect is how they make you doubt your own emotional responses. You start questioning whether you're too sensitive, too demanding, or too difficult. You begin managing their emotions while suppressing your own. Now that you recognize these 5 signs, here's how to identify them quickly. Ask yourself these questions. Do they consistently position themselves as having suffered more than anyone else? Do they use trauma to avoid accountability? When you set boundaries, do they withdraw while claiming they're just going through something? When you share good news, do they genuinely celebrate or redirect to themselves? Is their empathy only available when convenient? Are you constantly managing their emotions while yours are dismissed? If you answered yes to 3 or more, you're likely dealing with covert narcissistic patterns. Here's how to respond safely. Don't expect direct confrontation to work. They'll use your directness as evidence that you're attacking them. Focus on your own behavior and boundaries instead. Document patterns, not incidents. One passive-aggressive episode can be explained away. A pattern of emotional withdrawal after you assert needs cannot be dismissed as coincidence. Stop managing their emotions. This will feel difficult because they've conditioned you to believe their emotional regulation is your responsibility, but their feelings are not your job to fix. Trust your observations over their words. Covert narcissists excel at saying appropriate things while doing inappropriate things. Pay attention to how you feel after interactions, not just what they said. Prepare for the victim narrative. When you start setting boundaries, they'll tell others how you've changed and become cold or selfish. This is projection. They're describing their own behavioral patterns. And here's the key insight. The most dangerous aspect of covert narcissism is that they make you question your own reality while appearing to be the victim. They're emotional manipulators wearing the mask of wounded healers. Someone who truly cares about you will take responsibility for how their behavior affects you, even when uncomfortable. Someone who consistently makes you feel like you're too much while positioning themselves as not enough is manipulating your empathy to avoid accountability. The difference between someone healing from trauma and someone using trauma to manipulate is clear. Healing involves taking responsibility and changing behavior. Manipulation involves using pain to avoid responsibility and control others. Don't let covert manipulation destroy your ability to trust yourself. These signs could save you years of confusion and self-doubt. If you found this video helpful, hit subscribe and comment below about which sign you've encountered most often. Your story might help someone else recognize what they're dealing with. Remember, your emotional well-being and mental health is not someone else's therapy project. Protect it accordingly.